For families throughout Nevada, telling the stories of working women and men. This is our voice and our community. We are Nevada with your hosts, Leonard Cardinale and Nick DiArcangelo.
Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up.
Today's show is jam-packed with tons of information that will shape the future of Nevada for years to come. The 77th session of Nevada Legislature is about to start on February 4th, 2013. And this is a place for you to find out which changes are being proposed to Nevada state laws and administrative codes, and to find out which legislators are pushing these bill drafts out of committee to be voted on. Your co-hosts Nick DiArcangelo and Leonard Cardinale will keep you informed every step of the way. Do you have a question about how a bill draft request becomes law or dies on the floor of the Senate or Assembly, or worse, becomes a zombie bill? Zombies! Give us a call right here at KLAB AM. We are Nevada Talk Radio Show. Phone lines are open right now. Give us a call with your questions or comments. 702-731-1230. That's 702-731-1230. And follow us online at www.klab1230am.com. Calm. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Thank you for joining us here on the We Are Nevada Talk Radio Show with your co-hosts Nick DiArcangelo and Leonard Cardinale.
Yeah, that's me.
Good morning, Nick. How are you?
Well, I'll tell you, this is a Friday, and I am like so energized. I think everybody is. I was in my favorite little mom and pop coffee shop this morning, and they were everybody that was walking in was just had a big. I know it's cold, but everybody was like so happy and big smile on their face. And I tell you, I've got one too. This has been a great busy week, and it's been a week of meetings and town hall meetings and state of the state addresses. And I've been running into all kinds of friends this week, and the countdown to Carson City has begun, and I see people with purpose and dreams and excitement, and boy, I tell you, it just gets you so energized. You know?
It was awesome week. We had a lot of things that occurred. We have some awesome guests. We have Senator Tick Segerblom.
I'll tell you, we have great guests today. I'm sorry.
And we also have Al Martinez, the president of SEIU and the chairman of the We Are Nevada Public Employees Coalition and community partners. We also have some segments coming up talking about PERS, talking about collective bargaining. And last night we had plumbers and pipe fitters, our friends at the local 525. We'd like to send a shout out to them. Thank you for letting us use your hall for our town hall meeting. And there was quite the crowd at the town hall meeting last night, was there not?
Oh, it was amazing, because so it was great because we had obviously all of the leaders such as yourself for the We Are Nevada Coalition, but then there were teachers there, there were caregivers from UMC, there were airport workers there were members of the Progressive Leadership Alliance,
firemen,
from Nevada. I mean, everybody was there. There was a cross section of everybody. I mean, when at the end of the meeting, when we were all basically chanting, We Are Nevada. I mean, it couldn't have been any more true. It was a representation of our state through and through, and like I said, and then of course our elected representatives. I want to thank
and our guests of the night,
right,
Shelley Berkeley.
Yeah.
So Shelley Berkeley comes in and she talks quite a bit about Sheldon Addison and how he is committed to destroying unions. And destroying the middle class, and kind of she really didn't mix words, did she? She told everyone you better wake up and you better take this threat seriously. Otherwise, she said you'll be getting, what did she say? They'll be shuffling you out the door while they're while they're running their businesses.
Yeah, absolutely, right. So, and she also made this really clear point, this point that we've been trying to make week after week, but she did it so well, saying, this is our time to stand up and to fight. This is when we need to do it now, and we need unity. And boy, last night was great because she was speaking to the perfect audience, all this group that came together to fill this hall to hear her, and it was so inspirational, wasn't it? I mean, I was just blown away by it.
It was very, and then of course Senator Pat Spearman spoke, and she is just an excellent speaker. She got everybody energized. Senator Mark Menundo spoke for a moment about the quarter-cent sales tax that that the police are going to try to push for. We had several legislators. Richard Carrillo was there. So it was a all-around good town hall meeting and very productive. We even had northern partners. We had planned partners come from the north and fly down for the meeting, and it was an excellent meeting. It really was.
I gotta tell you. So then Aldo Venatelli from AFSCME, right? And he gave a great speech too, and talked about the challenges that are ahead and what we need to do and the things that are being taken away. And he spoke, and this is one of the wonderful things about the coalition, because you have this cross section of experience. And Aldo gave, and I didn't know this about Aldo. He talked about his work in Detroit in the healthcare industry, and he was speaking directly to SEIU members that were healthcare workers that were in the audience, and he was talking about what happens when a safety net hospital ends up being privatized, and the impact on the community, the direct impact on the community, and how people are left behind and how people are underserved. And boy, it was a shocking.
Well, he worked in the emergency room. So here's a guy.
He was an emergency room tech
that worked in the emergency room. So he was hands-on. He saw it, personal experience, and he said basically once the hospital was privatized and no longer public,
right,
all people got was a Band-Aid, or they got a shoulder triangle to hold the shoulder, and then kicked out the door, and they were right back a week later, because no one wants to really give them the care that they need to help them get better. They just want to get them in and get them out the door. And he saw a severe decline in the medical health of basically all the people that were not able to pay high dollars for that medical care.
Right. And see, this is the value of it. And this is why We Are Nevada is so important, and why we're going to succeed during this next legislative session. It's because we have come together in unity, and we are sharing ideas, and we're sharing information, and we're realizing that my fight is your fight, and your fight is my fight, and the things that are of concern to you have a direct impact on the community, whether it's healthcare, whether it's public employee, whether it's pensions, whether it's English language learners, whether it's funding of education, no matter whether it's public safety, whether all these different things. They may seem like, well, those are your problems, but they're not. They're all of our problems, and I think that really came through. I mean, that was just a resounding chorus last night, and also earlier in the week. I mean, Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada. They did their Progressive State of the State. Former State Senator Sheila Leslie gave those remarks, and again,
She's
the
awesome.
same type of senator. Oh yeah,
we love Sheila Leslie. She was actually making remarks regarding mining and some of the big businesses, and to quote something she said that is really at the core of the problem here. She states, instead of policies that promote the greater good and shared prosperity, our tax system has created a donor party mentality of primitive survival, even if it means sacrificing our children. And that really struck me deeply when I heard that, because that's really what's going on. But no one wants to talk about that, And they said, wow, Sheila Leslie is speaking truth to power, and you know what happens when you speak truth to power, correct?
Oh yeah. Oh, I know. So yeah. Look, she had some gems in there, and the statistic that hit me, like an RTC bus, was that the Nevada mining is taxed at 1%, and other states like Alaska and Wyoming, they're taxed at 20%.
Right.
Right. So look, there's a huge difference between 1 and 20. There's got to be a way to nibble out a little more, so they can be paying their fair share to get things where they need to be in this state. So
also,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Also, Mayor Goodman gave a State of the City speech, a very inspiring speech, a lot of positive information. She said they're on track to recover financially. The only downside, from what I heard from the speech, was she was a little concerned about federal funding and how that would come in and how that would boost the economy. And then we have Mayor Sherry Buck giving her State of the City this Tuesday, the 15th at 11:30 a.m. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be interesting to see how that goes, because, as you know, North Las Vegas is probably in the worst condition of any city, a decent-sized city in the state of Nevada. And they also have lawsuits against them, and they have quite a bit of legal issues there, and they're on the hook for some money, according to the Committee on Local Government Finance. If they should lose those lawsuits, they're going to have to come up with $25 or $30 million, and no one knows where they're going to get that money from. So we're interested to see what kind of comments will be made about the state of the city in North Las Vegas, and how positive that of a spin can be put on it.
Well, I bet we'll be taking a look at that next week. It sounds like there needs to be some sort of major reboot, shut down, reboot, turn it back on type of thing. You know.
Well, they do have elections coming up, so that could be considered.
That's the public's version of a reboot. Well, let's get the show going. Let's listen to one of our favorite segment intros, collective bargaining.
Yeah.
Run for your lives! Collective bargaining is under attack!
Don't they know we're just families trying to get by? Why are they attacking collective bargaining? We've never hurt anyone.
Well, we have a special treat on the We Are Nevada public employee radio show this morning.
An extra special treat.
It is an extra special treat. Joining us this morning is SEIU Local 1107 President Al Martinez. Al, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Al Martinez. Thank you for coming.
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me. I know you guys been tracking me, but I'm here.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. We, I think, just about every show we talk about issues that, obviously they affect all Nevadans, north and south throughout the state. But, there's been a lot in the news lately with regards to both SEIU and NSCA, and I don't think a show goes by where we don't talk about something that has to do with health care or public employees or
teachers,
obviously pensions, all issues that affect, your members. So this week, and I was there, we sat in, it was about 3 hours, maybe 3.5 hours, and this was maybe the fourth or fifth meeting by the Clark County Commissioners discussing an issue that, fortunately I have a knowledge of, working with SEIU, governance. And just right off the bat, give me your impressions on what went down on Tuesday.
Well, what went down is not good to the members in the community and the people that we serve in the hospital, number one. Number two, this back and forth bickering between these commissioners. As I said to them there at the end, I beg to differ in this bill draft moving forward to Carson City. Look, let's be honest here. That bill draft, even though it looks watered down, is very terrifying to me and the folks I represent. Because as you all know, those of you that go to Carson City, you send a bill draft up there. What you submit and the outcome are two different things. And we know that this thing can go on the cutting board, and at the end of the day, what's really going to be the bill draft? And that causes me a lot of heartburn because I have no control of that. So even though I did say to Commissioner Brown that he reminds me, like my Native American friend said, man speak with forked tongue. He did. He said one thing and he said a different thing. So what are you trying to say here, Commissioner Brown?
Can we back up just a little bit? Because I did not make that meeting. My apologies, but I had.
Yeah, you owe me an apology. Go ahead.
So for the listeners, can we back up a little bit and just kind of talk about how they're trying to privatize UMC or whatever that bill suggests?
Well, the bill draft's got like 24 sections of language in there that talks about bonds issues, talks about who's the entity, the subsidiary of the corporation, talks about the contract, collective bargaining, talks about the pension, it talks about the Constitution, bylaws, how's that going to be governed. It's got enough in there that's enough to warrant a lot of discussion. And part of the concern we had, I think, in one of the Section 12 was about, even though they said we have bonds for this hospital, you can't sell the hospital. Well, after the bonds, obviously, according to the language, you could sell the hospital and privatize it. That is not the direction we want to go. And let me clarify for the listeners that SAU has been working with my chief of staff with UMC for the last 2 years since former Commissioner Roy Reed initiated this process to try to make hospital like a UCLA type of hospital. We did a lot of homework, did a lot of research, and one of the models that we were comfortable was the Hennepin County model up in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. We felt that would probably fit the needs of that hospital, how we want to move. But the question became, how do you do business and keep business that needs to be confidential so that the competition doesn't have access to that information as you move forward with some kind of business strategy plan that's going to bring some profit to the hospital revenue. So that's kind of the issue that kind of didn't allow this thing to kind of blow up, if you will. So the bottom line is, our contention is, bill draft is fine. we're not opposed to a change in government structure. Let me be clear about that.
Right.
What we're concerned about here is not the structure. What we want to emphasize is the revenue. We need to find a mechanism to streamline funding into the hospital, because right now the county obviously is in control of the funding for the hospital, and we have to have some kind of system in place so the hospital can have revenue. But the governance structure of all the studies that have been out there never brought money into a hospital. And despite Commissioner Mary Beth Scow, who stated reading her articles that very often people with deep pockets don't do a lot of philanthropic endeavors with folks that are tied to a government. Well, the problem I have with that is that she spoke to Dr. Tony Marlin, who used to be the chair of this advisory board, that I guess he failed to tell her he gave $5 million to UMC Hospital and the cath lab. So it sounds to me a lot of contradiction here.
That's for sure.
So if you look at, where they're getting all the article, I could do the same thing. I can get all the research, whatever. But I think Chris G hit it on the money, and so did Tom Collins. Tom Collins saying, look, we passed a lot of bills through different commissions. None of them come to the significance and importance as UMC, which is about saving lives and taking care of the people in the community. And then you got Chris G talking about, hey, look, we need, this discussion is good. It's good. But we need to have discussion about how we're going to fund this hospital, how we're going to make it be something that's going to be good for everybody in the community, as well as the folks that we represent in the hospital that provide the service. And I think Commissioner Brown said that it's a fragile system, but let me be clear about fragile. The services that are being provided by the workers that work there is not fragile. It's one of the best. And I've been there personally myself, and I can tell you that that's not the issue. But the question I have is that what's the interest here of other folks? Let me be real clear. I'll be straightforward. I was there, and I saw the Las Vegas Chamber there. Wow, I'd never seen them before. I saw Virginia Valentine, former county manager, who's now the president of the Nevada Resort Association. She was there, too. Like, wow, what's going on here? You see, despite Commissioner Sisolak, I do wish him well as he went for governor. I'll say that. I'm not sure where he's coming from. I mean, he quoted these articles basically reinforcing the need for change, which I agree with. But I'm not sure what his real interest is in this hospital. I do know that working with the county, as long as I've been the president of SIU, that they want to get rid of that hospital, is my opinion. But I do think that getting rid of the hospital is not going to serve the folks that come there. And furthermore, they tend to attack the Latino population.
That was I just want to jump in. I felt that was outrageous. So in the day before this this hearing, I saw a article in one of the local newspapers, and I saw a quote all the way at the bottom of the article that said that first of all, they were blaming the Affordable Care Act as far as money and the problems that we're facing in the hospital. And then at the end of it, it said, and of course, we have this problem with the illegal immigration hurting the hospital. And that really raised up my hackles, because I thought that was misleading. I thought it was disingenuous. And I thought it was really, an awful place to take this conversation about this hospital. And Al, I'm a note taker, and as I was sitting in that meeting, there was something that I noticed from the Clark County manager, and he said that. And this came from some of the board members, where they said, safety net hospitals are an endangered species. I think I remember them saying that, and something kind of stuck with me on that. Endangered species in a civilized society, we make an effort to protect endangered species. We don't do what we can to kill them. We try and do what we can to help them flourish, because we recognize they have a place and a value in our society. And the other thing that the county manager said was, I don't know what more protections we could have put in the BDR. And I thought that was really telling, because you can't put any protections in a BDR. When the idea of this BDR was to punt responsibility up to somebody else. And when it's up in Carson City, you have no control over it.
That's exactly right.
So when Don Burnett said, I don't know what more protections we could have put in the BDR, you couldn't have put any protections in the BDR. It's like open season once it goes up there.
Exactly. And that's how we feel.
It could be amended. It could be a zombie bill.
I mean, I think Chris G said it. I think Tom Collins, former legislators, said it. Be careful what you ask for.
You're exactly right.
So is this the only hospital, so I understand, this is really the only hospital that is open to the public, and they have to give care to a person whether they're indigent or not. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the only public hospital in the whole state of Nevada, and it's one of the only trauma hospitals as well. It serves a lot, but to be clear, people tend to pick on the folks that are undocumented coming in. Let me be clear that there's a lot of people that come from across the country that come to the casino. Obviously, it's where everybody comes for fun. And people that get in accidents, well, guess what? They go to UMC Hospital.
That's correct.
So I mean, obviously, I've been there myself. It's a good hospital, but we need to come up with a way to give it some funding so it can do what it needs to do. And hopefully in a couple of years, it will become a UCLA or a Johns Hopkins type hospital.
Well, and look, I remember sitting in commission meetings maybe a year ago, and I remember Steve Sisolak himself making very good questions about billing practices and the contracts that they had with bill collectors, the agreements that were made with these bill collectors, how much they were collecting, how much they were paying back to UMC, what the frequency was of unpaid bills going to these bill collectors. I mean, these were really hard questions that were asked. I don't remember ever hearing an answer. I don't remember ever seeing a study on that flow of money, how it works, but I do remember hearing that it was a very significant problem. I do remember seeing a very red-faced Commissioner Sisolak, that there weren't really good, solid answers to these questions. So before it's kicked on to our most vulnerable in our society, I think there's a matter of taking care of the house, right, with finances.
Is this privatization? You think it's aimed at unions at all, at public employees? I mean, it sounds to me like the conservative right wing and the Chamber of Commerce, and that's probably why they were there, because we all know that their philosophy is privatization, consolidation, outsource, because when you outsource, you can get rid of public employees. When you privatize, you get rid of public employees. Is this, I mean, am I going too far here, or is this part of the bigger fight that proposed nationally?
The other thing, too, is you all know, not only do I represent UMC, I also represent the other hospitals. I think Mary Beth made a statement that a lot of hospitals are merging. Well, let me be clear. In Nevada, they're not going to merge. Nevada, the county, is the most profitable place to be here to have set up a hospital. You got UHS, you got HCA, you got the Dignitary with St. Rose, you got ISIS. It's perfect fertile ground for profit. And obviously we represent the folks that work in those hospitals. Our contention there has always been that it tends to be more about profit and not patient care. Right. And obviously right now we're working with our folks in the private sector to get better safe standing standards, to get better patient-staff ratios, because what's happening, the dollar sign tends to dictate what happens to those hospitals. So very often they'll cut back on the nurses or the ancillary folks that work in those settings where you're minimizing the care that you're providing for that patient.
Well, it's just like the other public employees are cutting back on firemen, they're cutting back on police, they're cutting back on teachers, and there's this austerity, right? Austerity is worldwide, and it is not working in other countries. And I keep asking why. I know austerity looks good on paper, right? Because you make the cuts and you say, hey, we saved you $15 million. But what we're finding out is that as time goes by, it costs you more than triple to be able to get back to where you were when you started this austerity, and that prosperity and progression is really the better way to make America healthy, and this regressive austerity is really kind of ruining the country, in my opinion, in my view.
And you know what? One more thing I just want to mention about the meeting, and I thought this was, first of all, I want to I thought it was great that Commissioner Weekly gave the employees of UMC a chance to come up and speak before the vote was made, and we heard time after time a couple of people that definitely stick in my head are the guy who's a cook, right? Who works there in food services, and I forget how many years he said he was there, maybe 15, something like that. But he talked about all the different jobs he can have on the Strip, but he chose to work at UMC. And tell us a little bit about the members and their commitment to UMC.
Well, let's put it this way. A lot of those folks there are 10 to 13% market wages in the area. So that should tell you something about these folks here. And furthermore, many of these folks have come from the casinos and the hospitality industry, working at a hospital. These folks have been there, most of the ones that I talked to, 15, 17, 20, 35 years. My goodness, that should say something about where these people are coming there. So they really are committed. I can tell you, being there myself, The folks there, they go out of the way to make you sure that you feel comfortable, because when we're sick, we want to be cared for. We don't need a whole lot of mess, and especially these days. We could probably have a whole segment about hospital insurances or the insurance company. That's another mess. But obviously, when you go there, you don't get that pressure.
Right. And I think, again, you said it before, one of the most important things, and this is what was so astonishing to me about this meeting, they were trying to make it sound like this was a argument about governance or no governance. This isn't a discussion about whether or not the governance needs to be changed or whether or not the whole community wants to see UMC as a thriving, better hospital for this community. The issue was the Clark County commissioners, and I think that June Cugliani said it perfectly. She said, "Why are we doing this? Why are they proposing this BDR when the Clark County commissioners had the power themselves to work on governance?" And I spoke with your researcher, Antonio Rodriguez, he's a great mind, and he said to me, he said that if the Clark County commissioners worked on this governance problem themselves, they actually would have more control and they would do a better job.
Yeah,
and that was just shocking to me.
So why are they passing it on? I mean, is there a strategy there?
Let me share. This hospital has been looked and reviewed and done a lot of evaluations. Matter of fact, before I became president, I talked to Chris G. that there was a report that I got my hands on of what we're talking about right now that was done in 2008 and probably in 2004. And so Chris G. said, look, talking about the sustenance or sustaining this hospital, we need to quit talking, but we need to do something about it. Obviously, she thinks that we should set up a health district, maybe raise taxes. But one thing I think we should do is that all the folks out of the county, the municipalities that access that care, should probably be their fair share. From City, North Las Vegas, Henderson, Mesquite, they all come there. They're not paying nothing. It's all the county by itself being responsible for the finances. So there should be a change for that.
Well, this is something that we're certainly going to keep an eye on as the legislature starts to open up, and I'm sure
this is a BDR now. This is going to make our list of BDRs to watch. That's for sure.
So, can we make predictions, or is that out of line? Because I predict that it will quote unquote die, and then near the end of the session, all of a sudden it'll be attached as an amendment or something like that. So this way, it's not too controversial. Or I don't know. What do you think? What's your prediction?
I'm not predicting because I was up there and I saw how these things just turn into things that you can't even imagine.
Zombie bills.
No, this is something that obviously we'll all be keeping a close watch on, Alan. And please come back and give us updates and let us know whatever we can do to help out and whatever. Really Nevadans can do, because this affects obviously Southern Nevadans greatly as far as and this being the only safety net hospital, the only public hospital, a hospital that's been around forever, for the longest time. Originally, and I did the research on this, originally to serve the workers that were working on the dam, and then and throughout its history, it's had different struggles as far as funding and as far as growth and things like that. But the community has always come together and has always solved the problem themselves. So for it to go up to Carson City is a surprise, but hopefully we'll be successful in reaching our goals.
Well, I'll tell you what I told the commission. I'm not backing down, and I think not only for the folks that work there, but this is something we got to work with the community, because the community should have voice in what happens to that hospital. Thank you for having me, guys.
Thanks, Al. You have a good day.
At the Minnesota State AFL-CIO Convention, Hubert Humphrey, the 38th Vice President of the United States, said, "The story of the labor movement needs to be taught in every school in this land. America is a living testimonial to what free men and women organized in free democratic trade unions can do to make a better life. We ought to be proud of it." This week in labor history. January 10th, 1914. Wobbly organizer and singer Joe Hill allegedly kills two men during a grocery store holdup in Utah. Hill, as an immigrant worker frequently facing unemployment and underemployment, became a popular songwriter and cartoonist for the Radical Union. His most famous songs include The Preacher and the Slave, The Tramp, There is Power in a Union, The Rebel Girl, and Casey Jones, The Union Scab, which generally express the harsh but combative life of itinerant workers and the perceived necessity of organizing to improve conditions for working people. He is ultimately executed by firing squad. His last word was fire for the crime, despite much speculation that he was framed. January 10th, 1860. The Pemberton Mill suddenly collapses in Lawrence, Massachusetts, trapping 900 workers, mostly women. The mill then caught fire, seriously injuring 116 women and killing 88. The fire inquest revealed inferior construction that was too weak to support the brick walls and heavy machinery. The engineer in charge of the construction, Captain Charles Bigelow, was aware of this, but was still acquitted of the criminal intent. The accident has been described as the worst industrial accident in Massachusetts history and one of the worst industrial calamities in American history. January 10, 1994. The U.S. Supreme Court let stand the implementation of the North American Free Trade Agreement despite the lack of an environmental impact statement. January 8, 1991. 200 Teamsters leaders held a Labor for Peace meeting to oppose the Gulf War in New York City. January 6, 1916. A strike was called at the Youngstown Sheet and Tube plant by its 8,000 workers. On January 7th, strikers were joined by their wives and other family members on the picket line. Company guards attacked the crowd with tear gas and live fire, killing 3 strikers and wounding 25 others. And this ends our week in labor history for Friday, January 11th, 2013. Let's listen now to a recording of Joan Baez singing the labor song Joe Hill, a tribute to the wobbly organizer.
I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you or me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, said he. I never died, said he. The copper bosses killed you, Joe. They shot you, Joe, says I. Takes more than guns to kill a man, says Joe. I didn't die, says Joe. I didn't die. And standing there as big as life and smiling with his eyes, says Joe, what they can never kill went on to organize, went on to
Jeez, you got,
Nick, what are you laughing at?
oh man, where do you get a load of this? I'm checking out BDRs on the state legislative website.
Well, let me take a look. Wow, we need to share this with our listeners. What should we call it?
Well, I think you gotta call it what it is. Irma, take it away.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce this week's f***ed up bill draft request.
All right. Well, let's move on. And we have a couple of interviews coming up. As you know, this morning we have Richard Tick Segerblom, state senator and attorney for Las Vegas, joining us this morning. Good morning, Tick. How are you?
Good morning.
So we were going to go over some of the issues that are coming up in the legislature. Maybe we could start with collective bargaining. Obviously, some of the conservatives have said that collective bargaining is going to be on their agenda, and they really want to either water it down or completely wipe it out. And, of course, we are supporting collective bargaining because we kind of feel that that is the only way we can protect our rights as workers. And I just was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Well, I think you're right. It is going to be an issue. And from what I've been told, a lot of the conservative groups are going to make a condition to, before they will support any tax increase, that we agree to amend 288 to probably take out the mandatory negotiation part and mandatory arbitration parts at a minimum. So I think that's something everybody needs to be very careful about.
You know, and it's interesting to me because I've been doing a lot of research on collective bargaining, and especially in the state. And during the last legislative session, I remember, we testified about, and one of our refrains were that, collective bargaining works. It's been working for the past 40 years. And as I look back into, I found this this great report from early 70s, taking a look at collective bargaining, but also in particular binding arbitration and how it came about. And it seems that some of the ideas that are coming across are, a throwback to the way things were before they were fixed. I'm going to just say it as fixed. So, the first idea, the collective bargaining for public employees, was a result of a strike in Washoe and Clark by teachers, and so there was a trade-off. No strike, you can have collective bargaining, and then binding arbitration came about because the agreements that were being made were not being honored. I'll say honored by the employers. So they realized that they needed binding arbitration. So now, this, proposed legislation seems to be saying, well, we forgot about all that history, and let's take a big step backwards.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the part of our problem is there's a segment of Nevada, and it's particularly powerful in the legislature that it wants to basically go back to the good old days when employees didn't have any rights and employers didn't have to pay any taxes, and that's something we always continually have to fight. I think that we're making progress in a general sense, but in, every session it's a fight.
Well, it's interesting that you mention how it's tied into the sunset of taxes or taxes in general, and tied into the budget. And what we found last year was that the conservatives were kind of holding policy issues such as collective bargaining, binding arbitration, retro pay within collective bargaining, and they were holding policy or administrative issues hostage against balancing the budget, and they're holding hostage issues that basically don't really have that big of an effect on balancing the budget. For instance, if they were to do away with binding arbitration, how does that help balance the state budget? That's why we couldn't understand why they were kind of holding those policies hostage.
Well, it's the same thing in Congress where they're using the debt ceiling to try to force Medicare and Social Security cuts. I mean, they just look for anything they can use. The problem is, to increase taxes, it takes 2/3 votes, and we don't have, as Democrats, 2/3 in either house. So they're trying to say, if you want a couple more votes in the Assembly or the Senate, you have to do these things. And last time we actually got snookered, I think. We agreed to some things, and then we didn't get the tax increases anyway. But hopefully we'll at least be smarter than that this time.
Snookered, huh? Yes, I'm going to go ahead and steal that term from you if you don't mind. And then moving on to the public employee retirement system here in the state of Nevada. We Nick and I have spoken about it just about every week
that's right.
that we've been on the show.
We'll be speaking about it this week as well.
We'll be talking about it again. And, and I was talking to some of our building trade friends last night, and we were just kind of, chopping it up a little bit. And they kind of asked me about it. And I said, they're people like NPRI and some of these think tanks who are nonpartisan supposedly, they're saying if we don't do something about this PERS in Nevada, that it's going to start to run out of money, and they see some liability issues. And then I said back to them, I said, let me give you a simple, talking point that's really easy to remember. For every one person that gets paid retirement out of the PERS system in Nevada, they put in the money of 2.5 people. So I said, if you get paid every 2 weeks and you have a paycheck, and let's say you use your paycheck to pay all your bills and it's gone, but at the same time someone deposits 2.5 paychecks back into your bank account, then it would be really hard mathematically to show me how that system is going broke. And I guess my question is, where are they going with this? Is it just a money grab because there's $25.7 billion just sitting there?
Well, here's the bigger picture, frankly. Public employee unions are one of the strongest backers of the Democratic Party, which in turn is trying to force business, gold mines, to pay taxes. And they know if they can gut public employee unions, then that's one less force they have against them when we go back and try to raise taxes. So it's really what they're trying to do is they're trying to undercut you guys as public employee unions. Now, the reality is we have one of the best funded systems in the country. There is no problem about going bankrupt. Things work very well. If we have problems, we raise the contribution limit, and it works fine. But they just see you being public employee unions as their enemy, and anything they can do to undercut you with your membership and in general, they're going to try to do it. And they see this as an Achilles heel. Nationally, there's a big effort around to make it out to be the public employees are stealing and making all this money and how terrible it is, and they're just using that as a wedge. but we just have to talk back to power and point out that that's not the case in Nevada. Things work well here. We have fewer public employees here than any state in the country. The system is fully funded, well paid, works fine, and the last thing we need to do is to try to get rid of it.
It's last night I had a great chance to hear former state senator Sheila Leslie talk about the progressive state of the state, and it's funny that you just mentioned about the opponents, who our opponents are, and why they're doing what they're doing in the bigger picture and that type of thing. Could you give us your impression yesterday about former state senator Leslie's address and what thoughts you had about that?
Well, as I said, she was basically speaking truth to power. And it's scary when she describes the state of our state and how really sad it is when you look at how we rank 51st in so many areas and high school dropout rates and blah, blah, blah. And yet when you go to businesses that have making a fortune out of our state, a lot of businesses which are taking things out that will never be returned, and ask them to pay a few more pennies, and they just totally wig out. But the population is here. The voters are here. We've proven that. We just have to figure out a way to translate that into the legislative support. But given the 2/3 requirement to pass a tax increase, it is difficult. I'll just admit to that.
I was astonished when she gave the comparison. I'm pretty sure she said it was Alaska and Wyoming, and their taxes on mining were 20%. And then she said that I think the net on ours was 1%. I mean, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, and all we tried to look at last year, because I testified in some of the committee meetings, and we were with our partners. Plan was really trying to talk to mining and get in some committee meetings, and what they were really proposing was that their deductions become the same or equal to any other business in Nevada, because as you know, there are deductions that mining is allowed that other entities are not allowed. So we're saying to them, hey, all we're saying is we want you to catch up. And if they had made some of the changes that we suggested, it would have raised to just under 4%. So they would have went from, about 1%, or some would say 2%, to about 4%. And that kind of money for the state could have possibly come close to helping to balance the budget. But I can tell you that there were several lobbyists for mining. They were just lining up one after the next, talking about how that was a bad idea.
Well, as you know, mining is actually in the state constitution. We cannot tax mining or change the taxes on mining without a constitutional amendment, which requires the vote of the legislature, 2 terms, 2 sessions, and then a vote of the people. We did pass to take it out of the Constitution in 2011. That'll come up again in 2013. It only requires a majority vote. Unlike other taxes, which are 2/3, doesn't require the signature of the governor, and all that does is allow the voters to vote in 2014 as to whether to take it out of the Constitution. And then again, once it's out of the Constitution, it would take a 2/3 vote to raise taxes on mining. So, but when you have one industry which is actually absolutely protected in the Constitution, what happens is you go to the hotels and say, we think you should pay more. They say, well, let's make mining pay more. You go to business and say, you should pay more. They say, well, let's make mining pay more. So everybody points their finger at the other guy and say, well, if they'll do it, we'll do it. And mining has this prohibition. So I just believe we have to get them out of the Constitution. Then everybody's on a level playing field, and we can go to everybody and say, okay, now let's talk seriously about how we're going to make this state better. Well,
that is definitely something we're going to be keeping an eye on as we move forward. And I know that we had discussed before we went on air about the gun issue, and I don't mind bringing it up. President Obama gave a speech, and part of the speech said, I will not take away your handguns, I will not take away your shotguns, I will not take away your rifles, but he is proposing legislation, possibly in the form of an executive order, to do something about the assault weapons and possibly the high-capacity magazines and even ammunition. And I'd like to start with ammunition, because what's interesting to me is you can go into just about any gun store and you can walk up and say, I need a case of .45 caliber full metal jacket, and if you have the money, they push it over the counter and you're out. But you have to use ID to get cough medicine. You have to show, right? You have to show your ID to get like
spray paint.
Sudafed, spray paint. and they're on you. I mean, they have this stuff locked up in these convenience stores, and you can't get to it unless you go to the cashier and prove that you have a valid ID with a picture, and then you say, well, I want some Sudafed, or I want whatever the product is. But when it comes to ammunition and even certain types, you have Teflon coated bullets, you have steel coated bullets, and it makes a big difference. Some kinds of rounds will penetrate walls and cars, and if it's an apartment complex or what have you, and it will go through walls. Some will not. So I see that, me personally, I see that as a possible way to move forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I agree. It seems like assault weapons and armor-piercing bullets, there really is no legitimate use for them. So unless I can be told of one, I think we should figure out a way to try to start the ban on them. And then if there is some legitimate reason, then we have to figure out how to differentiate between the person who does have legitimate use for them and the rest of us, because there should be an extra test or an extra ID or something. And the problem is not the assault weapon or the ammunition in the hands of whoever bought it. It's like the kid in Connecticut. It was his mother's gun that he then got his hands on and used. So there's lots of issues out there, but I think it's important that we start talking about them. For so many years, it's just been basically off limits to even discuss some type of gun control or gun monitoring. And I'm pleased that we, at least for the first time in my political life, are able to talk about it.
It's a shame that it had to come to this, though, for it to be this type of discussion. And, as Leonard said, I mean, you just see these disparities. You go into the hardware store and you have to show your ID to buy a can of spray paint. But you go into a box store and you can buy 100 rounds of ammunition, and there's nothing. Hey, do you need a bag with that? That's the question you'll get. So I think, and in internet sales, again, you can order as many hundreds of rounds of ammunition you want over the internet, but you cannot, in certain states, send a wine gift basket to my aunt in New York. That type of thing.
Well, or my bill about medical marijuana. I mean, the Constitution of Nevada says you shall be allowed to smoke medical marijuana, and the legislature shall make it available. And yet we've never done that. We've never provided a provision. Yet you can get OxyContin and things which are much more addictive and cause incredible numbers of deaths with a prescription. Just go to your local Walgreens.
Colorado has, you walk in those stores and they got glass jars, and you can actually, look at the product, and they have names for them, for the marijuana, and it's pretty.
You've seen that, Len?
I did on the news. I did, and but I've seen quite a bit
on the news. Just secondhand.
I've seen quite a bit of as a law enforcement officer. I've seen quite a bit of marijuana in my days, and on the as far as the gun issue, what I think is happening is people want to arm themselves because, let's face it, somebody went into a school and they had a rifle, and that's a lot of firepower, and I really don't mind them cutting back. And some people say, well, from a law enforcement perspective, what do you think? Well, as you know, a lot of law enforcement are tend to be conservative, and kind of a lot of them are Republicans, so they believe we should all have guns and arm everybody. And I understand that, but at the same time, everyone understands that there has to be limitations. You just can't sell, effective, high-profile firepower to everyone in society, because then, you're looking at possibly having things spin out of control. So I think that most people understand that, we have a right to be armed, but there has to be some sort of control over that. And I guess we'll look at that segment as well as we go into the future here.
Yeah, actually, that's what my strongest supporters have been, law enforcement, because again. Armor-piercing bullets, the only ones that wear armor are law enforcement. But the other group you find are people who say that the government's going to come to my house and try to take over, and I have to be able to fight back. If the government's coming to your house, they're coming first on the internet. They're not coming with a gun. They're already there, unfortunately. And then secondly, if they come, they're going to have a tank, and whatever gun you have is just not going to be sufficient. So I think that group of people who are just worried that the government's coming to take over their house, we can't let them dictate policy.
Well, and this was an argument that I read very recently, where I saw someone and they had posted this thing saying if the first step for the government for taking away your guns is registration and all this other, he went through a whole long list of things. But I can tell you, as someone who lived in New Jersey, I bought my shotgun in New Jersey, I was fingerprinted, I had to have an interview with a detective at the local police department, and they had me take a psych evaluation, which I passed. Leonard, I know that's going to be a surprise to you.
What was the score? Did you barely like 71?
I squeaked by, and then I waited 2 weeks before I could pick up the firearm. And this was an 870 Wingmaster for skeet shooting, for sport shooting, and these were the crimes they went through. And you want to know something? This was I didn't mind. I didn't mind at all. I thought this was a good process. This was a reasonable process, and in the end, it all worked out. And 10, 15 years later, there's no one that's banging my door down yet, Leonard again, to take this gun away from me.
Not from Jersey, anyway.
That's right.
Well, these are some issues that we will be coming up with right here, Friday mornings, 9 a.m. on We Are Nevada Talk Radio, KLEV 1230. I'd like to thank Senator Segerblom for coming in and chatting with us. Hopefully later on in the session or closer to the session, maybe you'll come back and we can revisit some of these issues and see how they're starting to cultivate. And
absolutely. And we know you're
we
busy.
really do appreciate it.
And you, from us, let us know.
I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Let's talk about PERS, man!
Pension talk.
It's the intro that started it all.
I love that intro. I still do. It's tied for my favorite.
This is, I'll tell you, it's just been such a fun day. It's been a fun show. I'm looking forward to, already looking forward to next week's show. We had some time to talk about what we're going to look at and everything like that next week. And, this show, obviously, people can call in at 702-731-1230. But this show is designed for the people that make up We Are Nevada. This is our voice. This is our chance to talk about the issues that are affecting us. And one of the biggest issues, of course, and it's going to be a knockdown, drag out on public employee retirement, and that's the fight that we're looking at going into Carson City when the legislative session starts on February 4th. But this is something that's not unique, and this is something that I think Shelley mentioned this yesterday. She did, and also others have mentioned that public employee retirement, this fight is not unique to Nevada. This is something that's happening across the country because this is one of the most lucrative money grabs that you can find in this country. This is a huge untapped resource. So the strategy has been to take a look at public pensions and create a crisis and say that they are that they're failing, that they are the source of budget problems, that they need to be taken over, that there needs to be reform, and it's something that we see in other states. And so I had some information that came actually out of Pennsylvania, and I was reading through it. And Leonard, it was amazing because
what did Pennsylvania have to say?
Well, look, they say here the public sector pension. So here's a point that we hear, and this is what they're facing. Critics are saying that the public sector pension fund unfunded liability. It's not the fault of public workers. It's not the fault of teachers. It's not the fault of nurses, librarians, other public sector workers. They faithfully contribute 6 to 7.5% of their wages every paycheck. Boy, does this sound familiar?
Yeah, right here in Nevada, the way you have to look at it is there's this pile of money sitting there, right? There's more than $25 billion sitting there in Nevada. And there are hedge fund investors, and there are mutual fund investors, and there's fund managers. And they look around the country, and they do their homework, and that's an awful big chunk of money. And then you add in the fact that last year, they had a 21% return, according to PERS, and the year before an 11% return. So in 1 year alone, approximately $5.4 billion in returns, right? So then people say that it's going to be unfunded and there's a liability. But what a lot of people don't know is that 80% of the money they pay to retirees comes from their returns, and only 20% comes from the actuarial money. So it's like paying your bills with your investment profits rather than your own money. So I don't really see how the fund's going to go broke, but that's not going to stop them from trying to convince the public that we're moving in that direction.
Well, it was another great show, and Leonard, so glad to spend Friday mornings with you every Friday morning at 9 a.m. here on KLAV, and want to thank everybody who joins us. and listens into the show. We'll see you next week. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and can't wait to do it again next Friday.
Have a good day. Thanks for joining us.
Now the sweet bell